Hello guys, this is part 132 of ASP.NET video tutorial. In this video we will discuss about reloading data into cache automatically when data in the underlying database table has changed. We will be building upon the example that we have discussed about in part 131 of the ASP.NET video tutorial. So please watch part 131 before proceeding with this video. So if you remember, in part 131, in part 131, when we click this get data button, we execute this command select star from TBL products, which is going to retrieve all the product from the table TBL products, and then we are going to load the product into this data set. Okay, which is then cached and this data set is going to remain in cache as long as you know the table data, as long as you know table data has not changed. But the moment somebody updates this table, meaning somebody changes the data in this table. somebody changes the data in this table, somebody changes the data in this table, at that point the data set will be removed from cache automatically, and that is because we have established this this SQL cache dependency on that table. Okay, now when the data set is removed from the cache, we don't have the data cached anymore. So next time when the first user clicks gets data, what is going to happen? This command has to be re-executed, and then we get the data again, and then we are going to cache that. Okay, and again this data set is going to stay in that cache as long as the data in the table has not changed. Okay, now look at this command, select star from TBL products. This command is a pretty simple command, and if you look at the table, here it is a very small table with 4 rows. Obviously the query execution itself does not take really long time. So the user who connects to our application at the point where we don't have that item in the cache, this query is going to take a very less amount of time. So the user does not really notice any performance difference, but just imagine in real time the tables may have huge volume. Imagine in real time this table may have huge volume of data. The stored procedure that we write which get the data may be a little complex, because of which the query processing time may be somewhere between 5 to 10 seconds. Depending on the complexity of the stored procedure. Okay, now let's say we have such a kind of stored procedure whose execution takes somewhere around 5 seconds. Let's say we have something like this, sp get products, something like sp get product. But then we have used this wait for delay here to introduce some artificial query processing time. In reality we would not do this, but just assume to execute this stored procedure it is going to take 5 seconds. Okay, look at that. Look at that. That is because we are using, let me execute it. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is because we are using wait for delay. And let's say I want to execute this stored procedure. This stored procedure, retrieve the data and then cache it. Let me execute this stored procedure. Retrieve the data and then cache it. So instead of this select star from TBL products, so instead of this select star from TBL products, I'm going to say let use the stored procedure. Let's use the stored procedure. We stored procedure. This one, copy this and paste it here. So instead of this select star from TBL products, I'm going to say let's use the stored procedure. So since we are using this stored procedure, we have to tell the command type is stored procedure. Command type is stored procedure. da dot, so da dot select command dot command type is equal to command type dot stored procedure. Okay, now look at this. When we run this now, when we run this now, so save this and run this. Let me close this. So at this, now look at this. When we run this now, obviously first time when we click get data, the stored procedure has to be executed because the data is not available in cache. So it is going to take 5 seconds. So let me click this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So data is not available in cache, so it is going to take 5 seconds. Look at it, that it is still processing. We have shown that. Why? Because the stored procedure is taking that long time to execute that. But then after that, when I click that, since the data is available in cache, so if I click it, it is data retrieved from database. Now if I click this, look at click that, since the data is available in cache, look at that, I get that within less than a second. So if I click that, you can see that I get that within less than a second, because the query need not to be reprocessed every time we click this button. But then keep in mind when the data but keep in mind when the data in the table changes from some reason. At the moment, if you look at the name of the product, it is laptop. At the moment, the name of the product is laptops. But then I'm going to update that to laptop 1. The moment we do that, and then when I click this button, what is going to happen? Means first I need to but then I am going to update that to laptop ones. Okay, here you can see it is showing laptops only. Now I'm going to change it to laptops to laptop 1. So execute it. 1 row affected. The moment we do that, and then when I click this button, what is going to happen? The cache data would have been removed, and look at that, it is taking a long time to process. Now because this, so if I am going to click this, it is going to process for a long time. As you can see, it's still processing. Now this is laptop 1. Now because the stored procedure needs to be executed, and the stored procedure is going to take 5 seconds. Okay, so after that, when I click this button, the data will be loaded pretty fast, because we already have the data set in the cache. So if I click this, okay, I click this. When I click this button, the data will be loaded pretty fast, because we already have the data set in the cache. Now the stored procedure need not be executed. Okay, so the first time after the data set is removed from cache, the first time whoever connects to the application, clicks that button, the stored procedure needs to be executed, because we don't have the data in the cache. Now don't you think it would be more beneficial even for that first user who connects to our application, if we automatically load the data into cache when that cache data set is removed? Yeah, absolutely. Even that first user who tries to retrieve the data will not notice the performance difference. So obviously, whenever a cached item is removed from cache, how do we detect that detect that, and how do we load data automatically back into that cache? That is basically using cache item removed callback delegate. We discussed about this in part 130 of ASP.NET video tutorial. Now it is actually very similar to that video. So if you have not watched that, I would strongly encourage you to do so before continuing with this session. So let's see how to reload that data. So obviously, to do that, so obviously to do that, to load data automatically, into cache, when cache data is removed, we need to define a callback method, and this callback method will be invoked when the respective cached item is removed. So the code to reload and recache data can be written in this method, but the most important thing to keep in mind is that the callback method signature should match with the signature of the cache item, should be match with the cache item removed callback delegate. Need to callback delegate. Okay. And the easiest way to do that is basically so before I cache the data, I need to define that callback method, and I do that using cache item removed callback. Cache item removed callback. Define the callback method, and I do that using cache item removed callback delegate. And if you look at the signature of this delegate, and if you look at the signature of this delegate, it is going to have a void. It is going to have a void return type, and it has three parameter. Three parameters. Now I want to define a method, the callback method, and the signature of that callback method should match with this signature of this delegate, delegate. So for that reason, I am going to copy this and then and then and then paste it in my code grind file, and then I am going to get rid of this delegate keyword and then semicolon, and then semicolon there. So now I have a method here. Call this, and I am going to call this cache item removed callback method. And in this method, I will define my logic to reload the data and recache the data set. And obviously that pretty simple to do. All I need to do is basically copy this piece of code which is retrieves the data and cache it. So copy this piece of code and paste it here. Copy this piece of code which retrieves the data and cache it. Okay. So I'm going to specify that here. I have already specified that here. Okay, obviously, so we have this method. We will come back to the implementation of this method in just a bit. For the time being, let me comment that. For the time being, let me comment that. So now I need to create an instance of this delegate. So now I need to create an instance of this delegate because that is what I need. That is what I need to pass, as an argument to this insert method. To this insert method of cache, insert method of cache object. When we cache the data set, so let's go ahead and create an instance of this cache item removed callback delegate, and I am going to call this on cache item removed. I call it on cache item removed is equal to new cache item removed callback. New cache item removed callback, and to this delegate, I mean to the constructor of this delegate, we need to pass a function name which is nothing but our callback function name. So copy this. Okay. And then finally, what we need to do, we need to pass this instance of the delegate. We need to pass this instance of the delegate as an argument to this insert method of the cache object. But however, if you look at the insert method right now, we are using an overloaded version that takes 3 parameters. But then if we want to pass this instance, if we want to pass this instance of this cache item removed callback delegate, I need to use an overloaded constructor that takes all the parameter that take all the parameter. And we have a method which does that, and we have a method which does that, or an overloaded method which does that. So if you look at this one, this takes 7 parameter. If you look at this one, it takes 7 parameter. As you can see here, this cache dependency, date, time, absolute expiration, timestamp, cache item priority, etc. 7 parameter here. So let's go ahead and define all of them. So we have until SQL dependency, we have defined. So absolute expiration. Let's say I want to cache this data set for 24 hours. So I'm going to say date time dot. So I'm going to say dot now dot add hours 24. Hours, and then since we are using absolute expiration, I am going to specify for sliding expiration cache dot no sliding expiration, cache dot no sliding expiration. And then the next parameter is the cache item priority. So I am going to specify cache item priority dot default. Cache item priority dot default. Cache item priority default. and cache item removed callback delegate. So we need to pass an instance of this delegate. So copy this and paste it here. No, inside. So we have passed the instance of this cache item removed callback delegates. This is the instance. So I have this instance already there. So let's go ahead and paste it and pass it here. So we have instance already there. So let's go ahead and pass it there. So I have already passed it here, there. So now we hooked up to everything that is required. So when we are caching this data set, so when we are caching this data set, we are passing this instance. We are passing this instance of delegate, and if you look at the that delegate, and if you look at that delegate, whenever this cached item is removed, whenever this data set is removed from cache, this delegate is actually pointing to this function, okay. So that function will get executed automatically whenever the cache item is removed. So what do we need to do in that method here? In this method we are going to write the logic to reload data and recache it. So all I am going to do is copy this piece of code. So again, copy this piece of code, and then paste it in that function, because this is the code that we want to have executed when the cache item is removed, because that code is going to reload and recache the data. So we are creating the connection string. Connection object, SQL data adapter. It is going to execute the stored procedure. And retrieve that data, and then it is going to recache that once again. Okay, all right. So let's build this solution. build this solution. So those are the three things. So those are the three things that we need to do. Define your callback method. Define your callback method. Create an instance. Create an instance. Instance of the cache item removed callback delegate to the constructor pass the name of the callback method. Pass the name of the callback method. And finally, when caching, pass that instance of that cache item removed callback delegate. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Run this now. So obviously the first time when we first click that get data button, it is going to execute that stored procedure. So only at that point of time it is going to take 5 seconds, but after look at that retrieve data from cache. Look at that. So if I click this, 5 seconds later, click that, and it is going to execute the stored procedure. So only at that point of time it is going to take 5 seconds, but after look at that, I retrieved data from cache. Okay, so data is changed. So data is changed. Now let's go ahead and update this one. This one, at the moment it is says laptop 1. At the moment it is says laptop 1. And look at the message data retrieved from cache. And then I am going to update this data from laptop 1 to laptops. From here it is laptop 1 and data retrieved from cache. So here I am going to change it, laptop 1 back to laptops. Okay, I'll show you once again. Here data, here it is laptop 1's and data retrieved from cache. And now I'm going to change it, laptop 1's to laptops. So execute it. one row affected. Okay, so the data is changed. Now what would have happened as the data is changed? SQL server will notified. The SQL server will notify .NET application. .NET application will remove that data from cache. Now when data set is removed from cache, obviously what is going to happen? What is going to happen? This delegate gets invoked. Which delegates? This delegate get invoked. Okay. Because that delegate will be notified when the data set is removed. When the data set is removed. And you know that delegate is pointing, and you know that delegate is pointing to this, to that function. Okay. I mean, .NET application will remove that data from cache. Now when data set is removed from cache, what is going to happen? This delegate I was confusing here because this is the function. Now here this delegate gets invoked because that delegate will notified when the data set is removed, and you know that delegate is pointing to that function. And what is that function doing? And what is that function doing? That function is actually, reloading the data. Reloading the data. Once again. So this function will automatically reload that data. Okay, execute the stored procedure, which is going to take 5 seconds, and then after it has completed execution, it is going to reload that data. And now when the first user connects to your application, after the a cache item is removed, and then when we click this get button, this get data button, now the data would have been already loaded into cache. Means if I click this get data button, then this laptop one changes to back laptops, and the data will be retrieved from cache. So I don't have to wait for the stored procedure to be executed. Look at that. When I click this button, look at that, At the moment we have laptop 1. Look at that. At the moment we have laptop 1s. Now when I click this button, it will be laptop and I still get the data from cache. So I'm going to click this get data button. So look at this. Now it is changed to laptops and we retrieve the data from cache. Okay, so I don't have to wait, for that stored procedure to be executed because the callback method has already been invoked when the initial data set that was cached was removed because the data in the database has changed. Okay, so we use that. Okay, so we use that callback method. So we have used that callback method to automatically reload that data. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.